Hi, I'm Tina Baker-Taylor, Binance's UK Director, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Perianne Boring, founder and president of the Chamber of Digital Commerce. Hey, Perianne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Tina, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
It's a pleasure. We're glad you're here. So for our viewers who may not know you or may not know you well, we'd like to find out a little bit more about you and your journey toward founding the Chamber. So prior, you began your career as the legislative analyst in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I think you were advising on finance, economics, tax, and healthcare policy, so a number of things. Is that when you became interested in the crypto space? And what did you find most interesting about crypto?
Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of background on how I got here and how I made my way to Washington, D.C., I was studying economics at the University of Florida during the 2008 financial crisis. And the
Mm-hmm.
financial crisis was the real estate market, and the real estate issues were in Florida. And pretty much everybody I knew was impacted by this crisis. So
Mm-hmm.
I, as a student of economics, really challenged myself to just understand what the heck was going on between Washington and Wall Street and why that was impacting my family and my community and everybody I knew. And what came out of that was I was quite disturbed at the state of our economic affairs and how we got there, and felt we should have better accountability. And I dedicated my career to working in public policy and moved to DC to fight for a better economic future for my generation and those that will come after me. So in working on Capitol Hill, I learned about Bitcoin. And as an economist, looking at this virtual currency that was not controlled or created by a government or a corporation or a group of people, that
Mm-hmm.
was just a fascinating concept. And the more I learned about Bitcoin and the more I learned about blockchain technology, the more I felt that all of the things that I was fighting for from a policy perspective, from a more transparent financial system to a more safe and secure and efficient way to remit payment globally, I felt that Bitcoin represented all of those things. And I just became a huge advocate. And I feel this is the most important technology I will ever see in my entire life. And I've dedicated my entire focus on helping support the growth of this technology. So that's when we founded the Chamber of Digital Commerce. And our space and what we're trying to contribute to this industry is to be a reputable resource based in our nation's capital that can work with policymakers and help just answer all the questions that they have. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of skepticism and weird things about Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain. We want to educate them, we want to make sure they have the right information, and we want to make sure our voice is heard in conversations that are going to impact the growth of our ecosystem. So that's what we set out to do, and we've been pretty busy ever since.
Yes, you have. So, since its inception, crypto, that's a great story, flippening story. I don't think a lot of people hear I was on the Hill and I learned about Bitcoin in the same sentence. So that's, I think, a little unusual. And also, I think I'm struck by every time I talk to founders who just drip with excitement about what they're doing, it's usually because they're addressing a problem that they experience themselves. So it's very personal. And it sounds like your story started there from a very personal experience of something that you wanted to prevent from happening again.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's a real deal. I really believe in it, and this is what I'm spending my time on, and it's how I want to help make the world a better place. And there's really nothing else like being able to do what you love and make that also your career. So I feel very, very honored but fortunate to get to do what we do today.
yeah, huge. So since 2008, when the crypto scene kind of exploded onto the world, there's been many ups and downs. We've experienced some great challenges, but also some exponential growth along the way. And the industry continues to grow, and yet we still have some regulatory uncertainty. So, after establishing the chamber, now actually 6 years ago, almost to the day, you're celebrating your 6th birthday
Wow.
soon. So congratulations, 6 years strong. What has been the most surprising part of your 6-year journey. So you kind of described, what you set out to do. Along the way, what surprised you most?
So one of the things that's been really interesting is seeing the Federal Reserve's response to cryptocurrencies. The very first, at the beginning of Bitcoin and the crypto ecosystem, a lot of people were really interested in what is the Fed's response going to be to this new currency. And the Fed didn't say a word until 2013 when Janet Yellen was testifying in her semi-annual address to Congress, and Senator Joe Manchin had asked Janet Yellen, the chair of the Fed, if she could ban Bitcoin, because he was adamantly against it because of all the illicit. That was right during Silk Road, so people using Bitcoin for illicit purposes. He thought it should be shut down. Can the Fed do that? And her response was, the Fed has no jurisdiction over Bitcoin. And that was it. And she just moved on to the next question. And that was all we heard from, arguably one of the most powerful institutions. And it really didn't give us much insight at all in their thinking. And fast forward to today. So just a few years later, it hasn't really been, it seems in Bitcoin time, it seems like a long time, but in just a few short years, the new chair of the Fed, Jay Powell, just last year was asked about Bitcoin in his semi-annual address to Congress. And he said, it's like digital gold. So a store of value is, one of the key use cases of Bitcoin. And to have the chair of the Fed validate that this technology is used for that purpose, I thought was probably one of the most important endorsements it could ever get. So just to see that huge change in their thinking in a short amount of time has been really amazing to see, and really shows the true importance of what this technology is and what it has the potential to become.
I think what it also shows, Perianne, is the true importance of working with and educating and being committed to influencing some of these influencers. And, the chamber by this point had spent, 3 at least years working with these policymakers to try and change that early perception that you talked about. So that's a big leap from, let's ban it to, it's digital gold. So the chamber itself, its members consist of a number of big firms, right? So big players in the innovation space, IBM, Cisco, Microsoft, NASDAQ, Block, to name a few, Block One. So is it important to have these big companies use their gravitas and their weight to influence policymakers? And if yes, then where does that leave the smaller companies, and how can they get involved?
Yeah, so 2 points there. As someone who worked on Capitol Hill on financial services issues, my job was to meet with all the trade groups and the lobbyists and the special interest groups and all the issues Congress is deliberating on. And the incumbents, the banks, your established financial services companies, they have just unbelievable amounts of resources in these policy conversations. And I always felt that it is important that we engage them in the process, because their voice is so big and so powerful. To just ignore that would be naive and a huge misstep. So by creating an inclusive platform, and so for me, I've always wanted the chamber and everything that I do in this space to be as inclusive as possible. We welcome all those in our platform that share our values, depending, many different companies are using and innovating in many different ways, and all of those who are dedicated to growing this ecosystem and developing this technology, please be a part of these important policy conversations that we're having. But we are really unique in that I think we probably are, one of the only groups in this space that has brought together the technology companies and the incumbents into one platform. And to be able to get consensus amongst that group on the policy positions impacting crypto, that is a huge feat, but it also gives us an unbelievably powerful voice as we're advocating for the growth of this ecosystem. And you do raise a good point. So if you have really big companies, like public companies, and you have really small companies, like small startups, they don't have the same amount of resources to contribute to public policy things. And I certainly understand that. We represent over 200 companies. Every single company has the same voice. Larger companies do pay larger membership dues because they should.
Yeah.
But every company has an equal voice. And our default position when we create a policy position and we go to the Hill or we go to Congress or the agencies and we're advocating for that is always going to be what's best for the ecosystem as a whole, not what's best for this member or this group or that group. We're advocating for the growth of the entire ecosystem. So that's where our position is always going to default to. And sometimes not everybody agrees on that because it can disenfranchise one company over another. But we want to do the right thing. We want to have an inclusive platform, and we're always going to promote the growth of this ecosystem over the growth of one particular company who may or may not have more resources than another. So all are encouraged and welcome to participate, and we ensure that what we do is in line with that mission.
So what is the upside for the industry? I've talked a lot about, engaging as well, and how to do that and how to be effective in doing that, no matter what the size of your business is. And, there will always be, those members of the community that, have a different ideological view around the involvement that policymakers and governments, et cetera, should or do have today in this technology. So what is in it for the industry? What is the upside for participating in these policy discussions?
These conversations are happening whether you want to be a part of them or not. I mean, the most powerful offices in the world today are debating and writing regulations and that are going to dictate the future of this ecosystem. So you have a choice. You can either be a part of the conversation and try to shape it in a direction that's going to be beneficial, or you can have it shaped around you. And I can guarantee you that the former is going to end up in a better position than the latter. And also for younger companies, for startups, for smaller organizations, being a part of a trade group like the Chamber, where you can share resources with other companies, is a great way to have your voice heard without having to bring in your own team of public policy experts. So there's a lot of resources you can share off of the Chamber's platform to ensure you have a meaningful voice, but doing it in a way that makes sense for a small company.
So from this quite privileged position that the Chamber, privileged is maybe not the right word. I think you guys have earned the position that you're in to be at the table and influencing some of these discussions. What are you hearing from governments and policymakers about, how do they go about formulating some of these rules and regulations? What are the considerations that they're evaluating?
Yeah, and one of the other things that I wanted to just mention, we also operate on a form of radical transparency. So all of our members are posted on our website. So anyone and everybody wants to know exactly who is part of the Chamber's platform. And also all of our policy positions are all posted on our website. So every single letter we've ever submitted to a government organization, we put it online. So if you want to learn more about exactly what our positions are and exactly what we're saying to government, we want everyone to be able to share in that knowledge and have access to that in the spirit of transparency. In terms of what some of the issues are, it's kind of interesting. So I'll just focus on the US. And in the US, we have this two-party system, with Republicans and Democrats, and both sides kind of care about two very different things. Republicans really seem to be very sympathetic to the business arguments that this is an incredibly important technology. We want the United States to be at the lead of developing and the innovation of this technology. We want US companies to be leaders in the blockchain ecosystem, and we want to give them the regulatory clarity and certainty they need to be able to establish businesses and grow and create jobs and create economic prosperity here in the United States. Republicans seem to be more sympathetic to that conversation and have been quite active in helping us get there on a number of specific policy issues, whether it's AML issues or tax issues, you're dealing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or so on and so forth. On the Democrat side, it's very different types of conversations. So they have concerns about investor protections and consumer protections. Bitcoin has been a highly volatile asset over the past, since its inception, and we've seen huge price spikes during a bull market, and then a lot of wealth being evaporated through the cycles. And there's natural concerns there, but that's also the ebb and flow of crypto. So they're very much in tune with ensuring that, yes, of course, the United States is a leader in this technology, but that we're also creating appropriate protections to ensure we have a healthy functioning marketplace. So there is a balance, and there are legitimate concerns that need to be addressed. And getting there has always been, an ongoing conversation.
Yeah. So, and I think we see history repeat itself kind of time and again, right? And when it comes to these big, wholesale technological advancements and innovations, regulatory uncertainty kind of seems to follow. It just comes hand in hand with that. What do you think we have or can learn from lessons from the past that we can put into practice today to kind of ease some of that transition into global acceptance and the mainstreaming of blockchain technologies and crypto assets that go along with them?
So education is the biggest challenge in having these policy conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And learning about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology is something that takes more than like a 15-minute briefing. I mean, usually when you meet with, a member of Congress or, a regulatory official, they're pretty quick meetings. They're used to like coming in, you have a quick ask, you deliver like a one-pager kind of with a summary, but it's been hard to do that if nobody really knows what it is you're talking about. So first we have to inspire these people to want to understand this technology. And then once they have a basic degree of education, then we can start talking about the policy issues. So continuing to refine the messaging and making the learning process easier. I mean, when I first learned about Bitcoin, I probably spent an entire year just reading all sorts of whatever I could find on the internet. And it took me quite a bit of time just to understand how it works, let alone how the policy implications are going to impact this technology. So
and imagine all the information that you had at your disposal, or you had access to then, versus the amount of information that exists today.
You can comment
right?
on
it's exponential.
Reddit and like YouTube videos of founders and tech pioneers. So, refining the messaging, refining the educational process is key. And something that I really believe in is actually letting people touch the technology, like letting them send and receive a crypto transaction, letting them see how it works. And that's always really tricky because you can't really give a government official something of money. So you've got to figure out a way to create a demo, but still let them interact with it. So those are some of the things we're working on.
I remember working with a policymaker trying to explain custody and how cold storage wasn't like a safe deposit box, but it kind of was.
But it is, yeah.
And so we kind of got all the way through that, and maybe 45 minutes later, we're a bit on the same page. And then somebody says, well, what's MPC? And I thought, oh no. And, the whole idea that on top of the thing they just learned, now there's all these additional layers of things where, it's already evolved into something else. So there's already permutations of what I just explained to you. And I remember the look on their face, and I just thought, okay, that is for another day, because you've literally just
only go so far in one setting.
Yeah, we'll come back to MPC. So I can imagine that over the last 6 years, and probably a couple of years prior while you were having your flippening, that there have been some pretty interesting moments in crypto for you. I get the impression that you've seen and heard a lot of things. So I'd like to ask you what your most memorable moment from your time in crypto has been?
So my most memorable moment would have been the day we announced the formation of the chamber, which we launched on July 19th of 2014. So just about 6 years ago, and we did it at the North American Bitcoin Conference. It was an industry event in Chicago, and Mo 11, who organized the event, he allowed me to make a special announcement at the very start of the event. So I'm in there, and nobody really knows what I'm about to say, and probably nobody really knows me either. And I get up and I just said, look, we're launching the Chamber of Digital Commerce. It's launched today. All are welcome to be a part of this. We are here to serve as a resource to policymakers and to address all of these regulatory challenges that we have as a community. And this is 2014, so the community looked very different then than it did today. There was no one in DC working on crypto stuff at all. We were the first. I mean, most of the people were like cypherpunks, anarcho-capitalist. Like the whole narrative of Bitcoin was like, we're going to overthrow the government, we're going to overthrow the banks, and like Bitcoin's going to change. Like this, it was a really different space. So I'm like, either these people are going to like bulldoze me and maybe assassinate me. I don't know. I was so nervous. I really did not know how people would respond. And to my surprise, everyone would like cheered, stood, and clapped. Like people were like, "This is a great idea." So it was probably the most relieving moment of my life, because I wasn't sure how folks were going to take it. But it has been amazing that there are a lot of people that do understand we have to engage on the policy. As much as we're investing on building out the tech and building out our teams and our communities and our platforms, you also have to invest in those policy issues, because if you don't get those right, it's going to put huge roadblocks. So it's, I mean, it's been a total whirlwind.
It's a great story. So we're coming up to time to round us up. What advice would you give for entrepreneurs and startups entering the space? What's next for them? What's next for us?
Yeah, so two quick things. One is keep going. It's hard to start any type of company, but we are in such a challenging space. Building networks, building crypto networks, that creates a lot of time. It takes a huge amount of dedication, but know what you're doing is changing the world for the better. And despite whatever roadblocks are thrown your way, keep going. And if you need a word of encouragement, call me anytime. I'm happy to be, your supporter and advocate in that journey, as I've had to do with building the chamber as a nonprofit. And the second is be kind to each other. There's a lot of competition in this space, but at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We're all still part of the same community. And I have seen so many companies and people just come and go. They start something, it doesn't work. They get in a fight with everybody. They, say things they regret. And then when they want to try their next idea, nobody wants to work with them because they were complete jerks. And at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goal. We're all taking many different ways of going about that. But if we're not united as a community, it's going to be that much harder to accomplish these big picture things we're all setting out to do. So keep going and be kind to each other.
So true. Great advice, Perianne. If people are interested to learn more about the chamber, how do they get in touch with you? And if people would like to reach out to you personally, how best can they do that?
You can see us on our website at digitalchamber.org, and you can ping me on Twitter at PerianneDC.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining us. It was great to see you.